Plus,
a tribute to a journalist who wanted to get it right. We'll remember the life of longtime WBRE newsman Keith Martin.
proudly covering all of northeastern and central Pennsylvania, this is Eyewitness News at 5.
Good Monday evening, everyone. Glad you could join us tonight. I'm Nick Toma.
I'm Candace Kelly.
Josh, thanks. It is a sad day for many people in northeastern central Pennsylvania. Former Eyewitness News anchor Keith Martin has passed away at the age of 75. He died from natural causes near his home in South Carolina.
Keith was a fixture on local television news for 3 decades. WBRE WYOU Eyewitness News I-Team reporter Andy Mehalshick is live now in the studio with more about Keith's life and career. Andy?
Well, good afternoon, Candace and Nick. Keith Martin was a newsman, a journalist who wanted to get it right. He was a leader and, most of all, a friend to northeastern and central Pennsylvania.
From those very first days when families like mine sat in living rooms like this to watch WBRE on TVs like this, they saw a commitment to inform viewers, not just entertain them. We call it news.
And for more than 3 decades, Keith Martin was the face of local news in northeastern and central Pennsylvania. A native of Scranton, he first signed on the air at WBRE TV in 1977 as the main anchor. Kevin Lynn was sports director in those days.
I wouldn't have time to tell you all the things he taught me about being an honorable newsman. He thought it was an honor to represent the First Amendment. He thought it was an honor to tell people things and have them repeated as true and have them be true.
Lynn says he heard about Keith's passing late Sunday.
I was overwhelmed with sadness, but only for that moment. Only for that moment, Andy, because every other memory I had of Keith was not only formative and instructive, and he was a great newsman, and he was an honorable guy, and he was a great friend.
Keith Martin, the newsman, was also a commissioned officer in the Army, Army Reserve, and the Pennsylvania National Guard for 34 years, serving with distinction in Vietnam and Cambodia in 1969 and 1970. His younger brother, Robert, says Keith was a true patriot.
His life was constantly moving, and it was fast forward, not fast forward, but it was very controlled and dedicated, and he continued that right on through his military life, and that was big to him. That was huge.
He says his brother always wanted to get it right, and no matter what he did in life, especially as a journalist.
He was dedicated to that public life. I mean, there was no question about it. He always, he was up front and wanted to get the news out and get it out correctly. And I mean, he was always adamant about that, making sure that it was covered properly.
He says Keith was not only a brother, but his best friend.
I mean, he's just a big, lovable guy, and full of knowledge. I always look to him. I'm lost now because whenever something got in my way or I had to stumble on something, he was the first phone call.
Keith's first stop at WBRE ended in 1980. He returned in 1990, where he was the main anchor until 2003, when he was appointed by then Governor Ed Rendell to serve as Pennsylvania's first director of Homeland Security. Former Scranton mayor and high school friend Jimmy Connors says Keith was truly an asset to the entire region.
He knew everything about every story, and he knew how high up they reached to our government. He knew a story all the way into the White House or into Congress. He knew the people.
And no doubt anyone who watched Keith or worked with him knew that he knew the value of reporting the news accurately.
All I want to do is thank all of you for letting me be a very small part of your life, and well, I guess you've all been a very large part of my life for the past 3 years, and I've enjoyed it. This is home, always will be.
Now, Keith was a true professional and friend of many of us here at Eyewitness News. Of course, many of us are having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that Keith Martin, a legend in our lives, is gone for good. But he'd be the first one to say, get on with it. We have a serious, important job to do, reporting the news, and we have to serve the people of northeastern and central Pennsylvania as journalists.
It'd be pretty hard to top that resume.
Yeah.
Right?
Very, very impressive. But he was humble about it. He was very humble. And that's one word, not only as a journalist, but he was a humble man.
Dedicated. Andy, thanks.
Now, Keith is survived by 2 stepsons and their families and 4 grandchildren.
He is also survived by his 2 brothers, and Keith recently did lose his wife, Kay, in August.
Northeastern and central Pennsylvania lost a friend this past weekend, as did many of us here at Eyewitness News. Former longtime news anchor Keith Martin died at the age of 75.
His passing saddens many of us here at Eyewitness News who worked with Keith for decades. WBRE, WIOU, Eyewitness News I-Team reporter Annie Mehalshick joining us live in studio with more on his passing and reaction to it.
Well, Keith and Candace, Keith was a mentor to so many people over the decades who worked as journalists and broadcasters, those who report the news every day in northeastern and central Pennsylvania, including this reporter. Now, his loss is being felt by many people who viewed him as a friend, a person they could trust.
Our first job is to do the usual, which is a great job of turning around.
There was no doubt about it. Keith Martin was the leader of the Eyewitness News team in the late 1970s and then again from 1990 to 2003. He never wavered from his mission, whether it be here at home or reporting from the other side of the world on events that impacted northeastern and central Pennsylvania.
We have to not only look at the battlefield as flat, we have to consider it in layers, vertical.
Keith was a decorated veteran of the Vietnam War and a commissioned officer in the Army, Army Reserve, and the Pennsylvania National Guard for 34 years. He retired with the rank of colonel, with promotions to brigadier general upon his retirement. He also was promoted to Pennsylvania's first ever Director of Homeland Security in 2003. On this day, many of us here at Eyewitness News who worked with Keith and learned from Keith reflected upon his passing.
And I was blessed to have the opportunity to work with Keith Martin, not only as a journalist, but as my mentor and as my friend. Keith touched so many lives, and he made everyone feel so special. And I think he was the ultimate anchorman. He came in, he knew the news, he knew politics, he knew every aspect of the news.
He was the consummate professional. He was the ultimate leader, and even with all that, he was one of us. He was a down-to-earth guy. He liked to joke around. He was never condescending.
Keith set the standard for the entire Eyewitness News team for decades, a standard that we still work toward today.
He's a legend. He not only was so talented individually, but he brought out the best with others he worked with. And I think of certain people who they demand respect. That wasn't Keith. He just commanded respect.
He was just such a newsman, and as Jane was saying earlier, we all looked up to him.
Photographer Mark Albrecht worked with Keith in the late 1970s and then again from 1990 to 2003.
A leader. I mean, there was no question. This is a guy who could lead the troops in Vietnam. He could lead the troops in the newsroom.
And I think I can speak on behalf of all of us who worked and learned from Keith, or those who know his legacy here in Eyewitness News. He was truly one of a kind, and we continue to work to maintain his legacy of serving the great people here in northeastern and central Pennsylvania as journalists each and every day, getting the truth out there.
It's definitely going to be missed.
Sure. I mean, I even threw it back to Keith going into the story. So he's here somewhere, but yeah, he's a good guy.
Well, you heard leader a bunch of times in that story. Says a lot. Andy, thanks.
Well, Keith is survived by 2 stepsons and their families and 4 grandchildren.
Now, he is also survived by his 2 brothers. Keith recently lost his wife, Kay, in August.
The passing of Keith Martin, what did you think when you first heard it?
I was so sad at that moment. Mark Albrecht, the guy who's shooting the camera right now, sent me the note last night, and I was overwhelmed with sadness, but only for that moment. Only for that moment, Andy, because every other memory I had of Keith was not only formative and instructive, and he was a great newsman, and he was an honorable guy, and he was a great friend. And I wouldn't have time to tell you all the things he taught me about being an honorable newsman. He thought it was an honor to represent the First Amendment. He thought it was an honor to tell people things and have them repeated as true and have them be true. It was an honor. So every other memory I have of Keith was a pleasant, wonderful memory, and except for the ones I can't tell anyone on camera, but that's another matter. But no, we were great friends, and he was a great mentor. He really made this newsroom pull together as a professional organization. And every time he was with a group of reporters, yourself included, he made us feel better. He made us feel like we were in control of things. He made us feel like we were doing important work and good work and doing it well.
One last question. Moving forward, the next generation of journalists, or the current journalists moving forward,
right.
What do you think Keith would tell them? What do you think they could learn from him?
No conclusions. No conclusions. You don't make conclusions when you report the news. You report the facts. You let the people at home make their own conclusions about the news. Don't ever get away from the basics of what the First Amendment demands and what the First Amendment provides for Americans. Report the news. Let someone else make the conclusions. So,
it's kind of culminated at the end of the year last year with the onset of and diagnosis of congestive heart failure, and said he's had a pacemaker, and they'd made plans originally to change and update pacemaker and defibrillator, but of course that wasn't scheduled until February. Not sure of what COVID issues were involved in the delay, but it was scheduled for February, like a week ago, Wednesday, and then there was another delay, and but it was rescheduled for the following day, which was Thursday, and he went in for the procedure, and something didn't quite work out in terms of they couldn't find a vein to put the wire in, so they said he would have to go to a more advanced medical facility, like a hospital, to get the procedure completed. So they sent him home, and I'm assuming they were rescheduling that and getting ready that squared away for the near future. And on Friday morning, he suffered a heart attack, and he was sent to the local hospital in Pawleys Island, where they got him squared away, and he was okay there in terms of, but they didn't know how much damage had been happened from the heart attack, so they wanted to send him to a more advanced facility in Charleston, which they did, and they airlifted him, and then we found out later on that after he arrived at Charleston that he was put on life support. Whether something else had happened in between, we're not sure of all those details, but he then passed away yesterday, which was Sunday afternoon.
Okay. Bob, describe Keith Martin, his brother, to people who never met Keith. What kind of person was Keith Martin as a brother and just as a man, as a human being?
He was a very he's an alpha male. He was outgoing. He was the guy that could walk into any room and make connections immediately. I remember growing up, maybe my other brother and I, there's two brothers, there's Harry, Martin, and myself. I'm the baby. But he even when we were younger, he'd go into a room and he was making friends and getting along with everybody, and he was very, very outgoing and very easily to approach and talk to. Where we weren't really withdrawn, but he was just made the connection no matter where he went and who we ran into. So he was that way his whole life. He just never had any trouble at all.
What do you think when you saw Keith's, obviously the media, his military career? You were successful in law enforcement. When you're watching him, as a brother, watching his public persona, what were you thinking during those years?
I was very proud of him all those years. We were young. He went to Lafayette, graduated from Lafayette. As soon as he went into Lafayette, he entered the ROTC program, and when he graduated, he got married, and they were on their way to Fort Benning. He walked out of he hardly had a military wedding. They hardly got out of the university or college there in Easton, and they got in a car and went straight to Fort Benning. And within a very short period of time, in 1969, he went to Vietnam and came back in 1970. So, I mean, his life was constantly moving, and it was fast forward, not fast forward, but it was very controlled and dedicated, and he continued that right on through his military life, and that was big to him. That was huge. Those are the things that I remember the most, that are most predominant. And I mean, he never had any question. He was certain of what he wanted to do and when he was going to do it.
Okay, and Bob, anything else you want to leave with the public? Because, they see this person on TV, larger than life. You know him from both perspectives. What do you want the public to remember moving forward about Keith Martin?
He was dedicated to that public life. I mean, there was no question about it. He always, he was up front and wanted to get the news out and get it out correctly. And I mean, he was always adamant about that, making sure that it was covered properly. And I would say that to everybody that ever saw him or didn't see him or didn't know him, that was his main purpose in life, and that carried in both in his professional life and in his military life. He wanted to be out front and get it correct and make sure that the public had all the questions answered, and he didn't want to leave any stones unturned.
Okay, awesome. Anything else you wanted to add, Bob, that I didn't ask you about?
No, he's just one of the greatest guys in the world. He had friends all over the place. I can't even begin to tell you. They're far and wide in this country and other countries. And I mean, he's just a big, lovable guy, and full of knowledge. I always look to him. I'm lost now because whenever something got in my way or I had to stumble on something, he was the first phone call, and he'd say, "Well, Robert, the first thing you have to do is you have to take care of this and then do that, and then just put your chin up and keep moving forward." So that was him. That was my brother.
I met Keith Martin, real name George Martin, in high school. We went to Central together, Scranton Central. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Keith was born on Adams Avenue. He was raised, I think, in Newfoundland. And a wonderful guy, even then, back in high school. And phenomenal TV personality and great community person. And I don't know if people know this. His mother was very prominent in the community, very active in politics and government. And so that must be where Keith got it from.
Tell me a story or two about Keith. Sometimes the times that you guys interacted with each other and that sort of
Well, two things. First of all, he was a patriot in the service, very high up in the military, very well respected. So he was many times being called away to manage troops and to prepare our country to defend ourselves. Secondly, Keith was a wonderful musician. I don't know if a lot of people know that. He was a terrific drummer. And I have been to his house, and he got up and performed. Totally in love with his bride, who just passed away recently. What a team, what a pair. So I feel very happy because I know Keith is going to be with her now. And he missed her. He missed her desperately. And he communicated that with us.
And so when in his time on the news desk, that was probably around the time when you were mayor,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what do you remember from his time when he was on the news desk? You were then the mayor. Did he ever report any stories?
Oh, many. Here's what I know about Keith. He knew everything about every story, and he knew how high up they reached to our government. He knew a story all the way into the White House or into Congress. He knew the people. He knew them well. He knew Congressman Joe McDade very well. And so when Keith would call you for a story, he knew everything already. He just needed you to confirm it.
That's awesome. And I saw a picture that your wife gave
Yes.
me of you guys. You guys were at a party, or you guys were having a good time. Can you take me back a little bit?
I remember this. It was over, I believe, in the hill section. That section, they call it, I think, the Hollywood section of Scranton. It's the section between Scranton and Dunmore. And there's a lot of people there, a lot of people from the media. And who shows up but my old classmate and my old friend Keith. And we had a wonderful conversation about old times and what it was like. You know, Keith was a hard-nosed, tough newsman, but he was never out to hang anybody. That's not what he was about. He was not about a gotcha kind of reporter. And he was a pleasure to work with. He really was. And we're going to miss him. He's gone too early. Too early.
Do you think his legacy will live on in
Oh,
the city and the area?
Yes. And here's how it will. The people who he influenced coming up after him in the news, they were influenced by him. He was, you know how they held up Walter Cronkite when he was a newsman, and then the people from 60 Minutes, well, they're going to hold up Keith as that's who you aspire to be. If you could be in the news, Keith Martin, you were doing a good thing. And he loved Scranton. He loved us here. He did. He loved every neighbor. I'm getting emotional just talking about him, how much he loved us. He did. He loved every neighborhood. He was a kind man, too. And honestly, he and his wife were such a wonderful team, and they're together now.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or say about him?
He was just a good man. You know, my wife is Jewish, Susie, and she knew Keith very well also. And Jewish people have a word, it's called a mensch. It means a nice man. And that's what I felt when I met Al Boskov for the first time when we built the mall. He was a mensch, just like Mel Brooks, Al Boskov, Keith Martin. Mensches, good men, nice men.
Jane, Keith Martin passed away. First of all, what did Keith Martin mean to you, and what do you think he meant to Eyewitness News, the operation all those years?
Andy, I was blessed to have the opportunity to work with Keith Martin, not only as a journalist, but as my mentor and as my friend. Keith touched so many lives, and he made everyone feel so special. And I think he was the ultimate anchorman. He came in, he knew the news, he knew politics, he knew every aspect of the news, and he also had human feelings, and he brought that into every newscast. And we have so many Keith Martin stories, as you know. We talk about them. He brought so much joy to all of us, and put smiles on faces. But as I said, I was just blessed to have that opportunity to work with Keith.
Do you think what do you think he meant to our community?
I think, I think Keith Martin meant to our community. He was a local man from Scranton. He never forgot where he came from. He never forgot his friends. He never forgot the people that were, helped him gain notoriety in his career. And I think the community looked up to Keith. They trusted him as someone who was on the newscast, who they invited into their home every night. And I think the community loved him, just as we did.
Keith had passed. What were you thinking?
I just felt so badly. They said he died from a heart attack, and my immediate thought was he died from a broken heart, having just lost his wife of so many years. So I just felt very badly to hear the news. And of course, my phone was erupting because we were all texting each other, and I was just enjoying reading what all of you had to say.
As a person in the news business, what did Keith Martin mean when you worked with him? How was it to work with Keith Martin?
I only worked with Keith for 2.5 years. As you all know, I came to this business later in age. And I was nervous, and I felt like I had so much experience around me. And he just made me feel so at home. I remember the first time I wrote a script for Keith to read, and I was nervous, and I kept going back in to see, did he read it yet? Did he read it yet? And then I saw the little P next to it saying it was printed. And I thought he did read it, and I looked, and he didn't change a word, and it made me feel like, I'm in, because if I could live up to his standard, I felt like I could. He was just such a newsman, and as Jane was saying earlier, we all looked up to him. It was such a pleasure to work for him. As I said, I only worked with him for 2.5 years. He came in, how many years ago?
He was
Maybe.
He came in
1990. Yeah.
But I mean, he stopped in to visit, and it was like I was just as he remembered me, pictures, and it was so nice to see him, and it was as if I was here with him all those years, right up until the day he left. So he's I always have stories about Keith and how professional he was. And he was a real joy to work with.
Keith Martin passes. I mean, what does it mean? What did he mean to you and to all of us here?
Wow, in a word or two, a lot. He's a legend. He not only was so talented individually, but he brought out the best with others he worked with. And I think of certain people who they demand respect. That wasn't Keith. He just commanded respect. He set a leadership and example that the likes of which I don't think we'll ever see again.
One last question. What do you think he meant to northeastern Pennsylvania? People come and go in this business all the time, but not just because he was here a long time. What do you think in his time here he meant to our community?
Yeah, he was absolutely an icon, and he was invested. He not only wanted to get the story accurate and first, but he was so caring about people who had the hardest obstacles in their lives. One of his passions, I know, was the Deutsch Institute brunch that was held every year, a fundraiser. And back in the 90s, he recruited me to that and several others. And he was so invested in people who faced challenges. I think Keith understood that. I think just all of his worldly experience, I think he understood that there's challenges to be conquered, and he wanted to help those who needed a helping hand to conquer their obstacles.
Awesome.
And one more thing, if I just could add. I was thinking this a lot. If a Mount Rushmore were built to Eyewitness News, you would start with Keith Martin front and center.
Dave, memories of Keith, what did he mean to you personally, and you think to Eyewitness News?
There were so many things that I remember about Keith, and as far as what I think about him, he was the consummate professional. He was the ultimate leader, and even with all that, he was one of us. He was a down-to-earth guy. He liked to joke around. He was never condescending. And he always knew what he was talking about, and we were ready to follow him, and we did.
Okay, and to the community, what do you think he meant to the community at large?
Again, he was a guy who came into our living rooms every night. He was very authoritative, but he was one of us. He was just another guy down the street, and there was that humanity that came through.
Awesome.
Now, ordinarily, when I do my show, I usually do the winners and losers of the week on Monday, but tonight I would like to do it on Friday. I would like to talk about a winner, the guy I worked with for 3 years, who is now leaving us. He's now in camera, and now that he's on the spot, Keith, we have a little something for you.
Oh, all right.
Hope that all will work well for you. A final few words about a buddy of mine. We worked together 3 years. We got along fine. He did the news and I did the sports, but we both spent some of our spare time in shorts. Tonight is the last for our Keith Martin. From Eyewitness News to Lancaster he's departing. He'll take his hard work news work to WGAL. Their gain is our loss, and we are sad as, well, Keith Martin's the spirit of our newsroom for sure, and Keith, thank you for making us as good as we were.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. I still haven't pressed that jacket, by the way. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're going to be back to update AccuWeather, believe it or not, in just a moment. We'll have Mr. Longworth and Miss Ryan to do that.
He's losing it. He's losing it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Big run tomorrow, huh?
Yes. Keith, it's been great working with you. You've
Thank
taught
you.
me a lot.
Well, I'm going to start getting my jackets pressed.
You will be missed.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. We're leaving this whole thing in the hands of a very able news team, by the way, so you don't have anything to worry about. Bill Longworth will be here beginning Monday night at 6 o'clock, and I have great confidence in him, so I hope that means that you will have that confidence too. All I want to do is thank all of you for letting me be a very small part of your life, and, well, I guess you've all been a very large part of my life for the past 3 years, and I've enjoyed it. This is home, always will be. So, that's it for Eyewitness News tonight. Now we have entertainment coming along, as we always have. People wonder how we do this every night. We're going to do it again. Here is Johnny.
But as Keith shook with the victors, he summed up all of our wrongs.
I was out in left field when the game ended. That's where I belong. I don't want to shake your hand.
I'm Keith Martin, standing on the banks of the Susquehanna River on the Kingston side in Nesbitt Park. You're looking across the river at Wilkes-Barre, the downtown area. Since I last talked to you at 9 o'clock, two things have happened here at this site which are of note. First of all, a line that I placed just above the water line when I talked from here 90 minutes ago has now been obscured by the rising water, indicating to me approximately a 6-inch rise in that last hour and a half. Also, the police line, which was right about where I'm standing, has now been moved back about 15 yards so that the crowd of people, actually several hundred people standing here looking at the river, has been moved back. Police are on duty here and at many vantage points along the river to keep people back, the curious, who are interested in what the river is doing. Now, the latest word on what the river is doing will come from the Luzerne County Emergency Management Agency. It is right now being voiced in a news conference at the EMA headquarters just over my right shoulder on the other side of the river. Director Jim Syracuse has new information from the River Forecasting Service in Harrisburg. Donna Crilly is at that news conference. The Wyoming Valley area protected by the dike and levee system, which extends to a height of 37 to 39 feet, well above any level to which the river is expected to rise within the next 12 to 24 hours before the water starts to fall. We'll have another live update report coming up at 12:35. Stay tuned for Eyewitness News for the latest on River Watch.
It's being taped.
I thank you all for joining us. My remarks tonight on Mideast policy will probably only extend until about 8 o'clock, at which time I will take your questions. But this is a happy Valentine's Day, and I'm very pleased that you're sharing that with me as well. What I'm saying in so many words is this is a small election with big importance, narrow in focus, where mistakes are multiplied and defeats are magnified. Success is what we need because it's so small. Our first job is to do the usual, which is a great job of turning around the first returns from our reporters in the field, getting them into the computer, and Sandy on the air. Are you going to be upstairs or? Okay.
I'll pick up.
Yeah, I know that. So, that means we don't walk, we run to get those things accomplished. That job will last from about 10 minutes after 8 until about 8:40, after which the election wire will take over and beat the pants off anything we can do locally except Luzerne and Lackawanna County. Mr. Woods and Mr. Munley will be helping us with that because the returns from Luzerne and Lackawanna County are crucial. Casey does not run big in his 2 home counties, Casey loses. So, the sooner we know that, the quicker we can make a call. So, we need that information. The other thing we have to do is make sure that our lives are tuned in properly. If we have problems, we can work around anything as long as we know in advance. We have flexibility. Between the 2 stations, we can mix and match, and this goes first, that goes second. I would predict by 9:30 we will begin to have substantial returns. By 10 o'clock we'll have a pretty good idea where this thing is. By 10:30 or 10:45 it could be over, or we will know we'll be in for a long night. I suspect it will be over fairly early. Lieutenant governor's race is very interesting because there are 9 candidates. We cannot stay up all night for the lieutenant governor's race unless Ron Williams is ahead. He's the only local candidate. He will not be, I assure you. So I just ask everybody, the tendency with a small election like this is say, well, there's not much to do, so we goof off, and then at the last minute we sit there and say, my God, Channel 16 got that on the air first. Well, let's do our business first, and we can laugh and pat each other on the rear end or pat ourselves on the rear end, whatever your choice or preference is. I don't need to know that.
Can I come back for that?
I'll meet you over at the courthouse.
Okay.
But do not be deluded that this is not important because it's small. Everybody wants to know who's going to win between Casey and Rendell. We get the first numbers up on the bottom of the screen, and we see them change every 2 minutes with a new precinct coming in, and we've got about a dozen to 20 precincts with information coming in. Those viewers will be looking at us because they'll say, oh. And by that time, we're in the electronic race, and we'll be fine when we get to that point. But do not be deluded into thinking that this is just a little election, 1 or 2 simple contests. If we're first and we're best and we have the best product on the air, this is a great position round for November. And it also means that those 2 that campaign headquarters in Scranton, if we're good and we're fast and we're accurate, they all going to be watching us, and that's about 1,000 people are going to be up there in that hotel room. So we want to be the one there. I'd like nothing better than to see those TV sets up there on WBRE instead of WNEP. Okay? Any questions? But please don't go to sleep on this because there'll be a flurry of activity, then things will slow down. But we need everybody to do their job right, fast, and accurate, and things will turn out great. Any questions? We got the right team here. We're going to do it. We're going to do it right. We'll do it well. And if we have to adjust on the fly, we'll do that. That's easy. It's easy if everybody does their job. Thanks a lot. And again, thank you for your Valentines. And the Mideast policy, I think, is out of control. Thank you very much. God bless America.
We'll be back.
I am not a crook. I am not a crook.
We'll be back for more Keith.
What? Well, here we are again. A lot of special preparations by Santa for Christmas '96. Brand new rocking chair, courtesy of John Bendick. Bifocal glasses, courtesy of a half-century of life. The Moths let me negotiate for one more wearing of the old red jacket and a nice new green Christmas tie. And a special pleasure this year, a nice Christmas cold, just in time for Christmas. Well, here is Clement Moore's classic. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutter and threw up the sash. Well, the moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. Well, as dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each tiny hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. Well, he was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, and then turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
My good friends, we're going to bring in the 1995 version of the Gipper. Come on in, men. We've heard it before, it's tired, but let's listen to it and get through it. Come on. All right, guys, come on, suck that gut in. Let's go here. Oh, come on. Holy, all right. Pick up the pace.
I know you're upset. You saw the quote on the bulletin board. Guy called you a bunch of low-life hammerheads.
Who did?
I did. Oh, all right, what am I going to say? All right. You got a lot of miles to cover tonight, a lot of big ball games. I'm counting on you. And when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So get going. Come on. Okay, Newman. More sit-ups. Got to have it. Haircut, Michaels. Let's go here.
Wow. Come on, we got time.
And by the way, we're not hammerheads.
Holy mackerel. What else can I say except don't steal any towels? And live from the Sports Center, this is Sports Friday.
You got it, baby.
Sports Friday. Sports Friday. Sports Friday.
Satellite Center. The Satellite Center?
Yeah.
Why the satellite? Where's the story out?
Pete, I'm only a drone here.
Just like Red Auerbach. It's time to light up. You know what? Those guys do a good job.
Why don't you stay in news, pal? Have a nice weekend.
Sports Friday.
This is the picture of the general with his mother. And I know he's probably not going to appreciate this, but these are our roots, and this is where we begin, and of course...
With great pride and a little sibling ribbing, Scranton Police Officer Robert Martin talked about his big brother, whose name really isn't Keith.
It's George Keith. George Keith Martin, same as our father. He was the oldest, and he was a leader. He was always out in front. He's the life of the party. He's the guy where the crowd is all around him in the corner of the room, and he's telling jokes, and and everybody's over there listening to him.
But the Martins made sure Bob, George, and brother Harry were well grounded.
When we were younger and we were growing up, it was phenomenal. We used to work on a chicken farm. We used to carry chickens for a farmer, and we worked on a mushroom farm, and that kind of work taught us a good work ethic. It taught us to respect money and probably responsible for a lot of his success in life.
Keith and I graduated Scranton Central together in 1964, and I always tease him that he and I were the two goodest students in the class.
Jimmy Connors went on to be Scranton's mayor. He always knew his classmate was meant for big things.
We all admired him, looked up to him, and knew that he was going to succeed.
In 32 years of military service, he's probably the best commander I've ever worked for.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Jerry Burns has known Keith since the late 70s. Their military careers have intertwined.
We're both Vietnam veterans. People don't realize how his military, he never speaks about his military career. He's a very decorated Vietnam veteran.
As Keith continued his military career as a citizen soldier, Burns was his chief of staff. The two coordinated several National Guard training exercises in Germany, where Colonel Martin was all about the team.
We'd be in the heat of a battle, a simulation exercise, and it wouldn't be 3 o'clock in the morning, the door would open, he'd walk in with his Perotti cigar, and he'd say, "How's the battle going?" And I'd say, "Sir, we have..." And he'd stay around. I said, "Are you going to sleep?" He said, "I did yesterday."
I asked him how much he wanted. He said he'd like to start at about $28,000. I told him he had our channel number correctly, but most of us couldn't pronounce 28,000.
Former news director Tom Bigler offered Keith a job at WBRE in 1977.
John Bendick now at McLaughlin headquarters.
He, being a product of this area, was extremely well qualified because of its diversity and was aware of the differences and of our history and sensitive to where we were going.
Keith anchored in northeastern Pennsylvania for 3 years, then journeyed to Florida, Rochester, New York, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But in 1990, he came home.
This is Eyewitness News with anchor Keith Martin.
I saw Keith Martin as a youngster, watched him on television. It was my honor and privilege to be Keith's producer for the last 13 years.
Well, you think, what if we took this, moved it up here?
Keith has been a part of life for all of us, but especially for senior producer Jane Ann Bugda.
He is our leader in our newsroom, which we like to call our family. He has this quiet sense of confidence that lets you know that Keith is here, Keith is in charge, and you have nothing to be concerned about.
Something Keith exuded daily on the anchor desk and advanced when he covered the Persian Gulf War.
We have to not only look at the battlefield as flat, we have to consider it in layers, vertical layers.
Or behind the scenes in election meetings.
Our first job is to do the usual, which is a great job of turning around.
But Keith's command is always tempered with humility and humor.
I think is out of control. Thank you very much. God bless America.
He can turn around and tell you a funny story, and he has the most infectious laugh, and I love to hear Keith Martin laugh.
And that's just one of the many qualities which our Keith will use as he tries to protect all of us.
Integrity. He's beyond reproach, his integrity, and that was instilled on all of us by our mother.
Not only his military background, but because of his experience in journalism, but primarily because he's an excellent communicator.
When I saw him with Governor Rendell, I saw an aspect of Keith Martin that I never ever saw before. I think that this job is going to be his life's mission.
I not only think that he is the best person for the job of the Commonwealth's Director of Homeland Security, I think he is the only person.
And I'd be willing to bet that Pennsylvania will be the lead state in the country in Homeland Defense, because he's going to make it happen.
Kathy Basinski, 28 News.
With a tenure of over 17 years, Keith Martin is a local television icon. The General sat down with us a few weeks ago to talk about what he remembers most about his days here at Eyewitness News.
Good morning and welcome to a special edition of Eyewitness News Veterans Views. The depth and strength of character of the people of northeastern Pennsylvania is probably the biggest story that I covered in my 32 years in front of the camera. The list is long. The Dan Flood trial, the 3 Mile Island accident, the blizzard and flood of '96, the Lake Carey tornado more recently, the greatest strength of northeastern Pennsylvania, and I was able to observe it, report it repeatedly over many years, is the people. Coming from a strongly military background, I always believe that you need to lead by example. A good piece of leadership is motivation. On a day-to-day basis, when you're sitting thinking about, well, I've got to cover a school board meeting or a fender bender down on South Main Street, it can become routine. The underlying philosophy and beauty of local television, and that's really what we're talking. This is local television. It's who do we really work for? And I found that it was both fun, motivational, to constantly remind the troops in the field, the producers, all the people who work so hard, because the person or persons you see in front of the camera are only the tip of the iceberg. But keeping everybody functioning as a team, I always thought was critically important. Who do we work for? And what makes me proudest about this 60th anniversary? We're on cable all over places we could never have reached before, but what has never changed is the commitment from the top down, from the highest manager to the first person who comes in and does the early morning news, is the commitment to the people of the area.
Of Operation Desert Storm. In Saudi Arabia, I'm Keith Martin, Eyewitness News.